Welcome back to the table for the Friday, October 4, 2024 installment of Market Plus. Matt Bennett, Ted Siefried here again, having to suffer through my ridiculousness between takes. One of those things, Ted, yes, I'm full of useless knowledge, but doesn't it make life more fun when I can at least make you smile?
In small bits, yes.
Small bits, yeah, we don't need to do it forever. One of the things I know is Matt's a farmer. Matt's been farming this week. You were busy last night harvesting. How are things looking in Illinois?
Yeah, and so we got a little later start than normal, which, a lot of folks did. Things didn't dry down as much as what we thought we would, even though we had a, fairly dry August and warm. I don't know, we started a little late and then we had 2 rains that kind of pushed us out. But the thing is, a lot of folks say, I wish I had that rain. And why is that? You talk to folks in parts of Iowa that haven't gotten the rain and they're cutting 8 and 9% beans. It's tough because they're cutting 8 and 9% beans. It's got leaves on them, So we had the same thing. We've got some from this hurricane that came up, just remnants of it. We went from cutting 9% beans to cutting 12.5 to 13.5% beans. It was actually a thing of beauty for us. It kicked us out of the field, absolutely. But, you're sitting here on October 4th, and typically we're 2/3 or better done in our part of the world. Some folks are banging on the door. We're maybe 1/3 done right now, but you've got a 2-week window, it looks like, of just beautiful harvest weather. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I expect a massive weekend as far as soybean harvest is concerned. Some corn, but I mean, the beans are ready in so many different places. So I think there's going to be a lot going on here. If things go well for us, I think, by the 20th, 25th, we'll be able to wrap things up. But it's going to take good weather.
So Gary in Wisconsin has a question for you, and then you get to answer it as well. But does limited farmer selling on this last rally mean the crop is not as good as expected, or the price is still below the cost of production?
Okay, so limited farmer selling, in my opinion, doesn't always have a whole lot to do with price. When we rally, sometimes we just get bullish, is what we do, unfortunately. But, does it have to do with the crop being smaller? I don't believe so. I really don't. When you look over the course of time, over the last several months, it's been well known that the farmer's been very reluctant to step in and reward the market. Obviously we were going down, down, down. Now you rally 40, 50 cents in corn, you rally $1 plus in soybeans. Why are they reluctant? That's a wonderful question, but I don't think it means the crop is smaller. When you look at early yields, they look phenomenal. I would offer a word of caution. We talked about this a little bit. Usually your first stuff is what you're going to harvest. First is going to be your best stuff, right? First of all. Second of all, a drier, biased August leads me to believe some of the later harvest results won't be quite as good as the early, but the early has been so good that I think it could carry us to awfully big crops.
Is that what you've heard?
Yeah, pretty much. Farmers, we don't like to sell a rally because, if I sell it, why would I sell today if it's going to be higher tomorrow, right? So really, it takes a break in the market to get bushels to move. I'm just full of adages today. The carrot versus the stick, right? The market dangles the carrot to try to get bushels, and when that doesn't work, then comes out the stick. And we've had the carrot. At what point does the stick come out? I don't know. And is the crop better or worse? I think what I'm hearing is that it's worse than what we were thinking in maybe the second week of August, but it's better than what we were thinking in the second or third week of September. I think I've heard a lot of pleasantly surprised, specifically for corn, but even for soybeans as well. Exception being maybe South Dakota. I just on the way here was hearing some horror stories, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. As far as where the national average yield concerns, I am going to say that we walked the crops back from where they could have been and what that potential could have been. But the question really is where would that potential have really been? Could we have seen a 186 national average yield in corn? Could we have seen a 55 national average yield in soybeans? I think these numbers are within the realm of possibility. Now, they're not there anymore, but it doesn't mean that corn yield has to drop to a 180 or a 179. I think that's well too low. Does it mean that soybean yield has to drop below a 52? I don't think so either. We'll see what the USDA has to say on that next Friday. We're really setting up for one of the most anticipated reports that I can think of in recent history on this October 11th report. But I worry that some people are going to be surprised, or potentially could be surprised, if the USDA doesn't drop yields fairly aggressively.
Seamus in Iowa wants to ask you about your, you talk about walking fields a little bit, but he says, Ted, you said the crop was going to finish good, but everyone is lowering yields. Where do you think the crop will finish, and will you admit that you shouldn't count flat pods on the Pro Farmer Tour?
Okay. I answered a lot of that question just now.
Yes, you did.
Right?
You did.
It didn't finish as well as it could have. But again, what was the peak potential? When things looked at its best, I think the potential was higher than where the USDA has ever printed on what their current yields are, which are their highest that they've had. Counting flat pods, the thing about Crop Tour is that you're counting the potential. When you're in the third week of August, really anything can happen. And I mean, predicting the future of markets, predicting the future of weather, predicting the future is tough, right? You never really know what's going to happen. So you have to count the pods because you're counting the potential. And I'm also going to say, look, this is going to bring me back to my genetics conversation. We had the big ramp up in genetics in corn in the 2000 teens, right, where corn genetics just got really, really good. You saw evidence of that last year when it got hot and dry at the end of the year also, but we still ended up with a pretty darn good corn yield. The bean genetics, I think, are the ones that have really come on strong lately. I think we kind of proved that out last year. This could be the year where we really prove that out. These plants, if they are big, green, leafy plants, they do everything they can to sacrifice the moisture in the plant to push it in to fill out those pods. And if the pod count's there, I think likely you're going to have a pretty decent yield, even if you do have a warmer, drier finish.
It's like an average. It's usually going to average out.
Right.
It's not going to be the extremes.
Right.
Is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, you can have extremes.
Yes.
You can have perfect. You can have completely imperfect. I think what we had this year wasn't absolutely perfect, but it was closer to the side of perfect than it was imperfect.
I think you're right. And I think that Charlie in Ohio has a question for Matt. Should we start looking at sales for the 26 crop as a start, or hold off and just focus on 25?
Well, I think there was someone else that was asking about a year prior, maybe. So sometimes we got to at least focus on where we're at. Now, 26, here's the thing. When I look at beans, I do think that it might not be a bad idea to hedge off some risk whenever I look out to 26. A lot can happen between now and then, so I'm talking small percentages. But the bottom line for corn, in my opinion, is that you do have a bit of a developing story as far as demand's concerned. We're not super bullish, and I can't get super bullish if beans are going to act as an anchor. And I think it's a very real possibility that beans do act as an anchor. So I don't know that I'm getting super aggressive there, certainly not with corn. To go back to what Ted was saying just a little bit, if I can go there, I think whenever it comes to these beans, the early yields were just flat out incredible. And so what you did this year, you had a pretty wet July, no doubt about it. You built this bean plant that was just loaded with pods. You put in another top, so to speak. People say beans are putting their top in. And so you've got all these nodes, all of these pods, and all of a sudden you're thinking, well, this crop is not going to be as good because we had a drier biased August. Most people went into August with a full soil moisture profile. Okay, so when they go out in the field, and I've been on the tour before, you give a condition score as well as far as what the ground looks like. If there's not cracks in the ground, and I've got 100 pods on a plant, good Lord, I'm thinking, this is going to be one heck of a big bean crop. So when you have the most pods you've ever seen on an overall basis, of course you're going to think it's going to be a big bean crop. My personal opinion, though, is that the verdict's out as far as May beans are concerned. I think the April beans are just flat out unbelievable for most people. You talk to people, most people are happy with beans. But I think there's been some disappointment versus expectations. Why? Because they thought they had 100 bushel beans in the I-states for some people. They really did. And the potential was probably there, but still 85 or 80 bushel beans, 75 bushel beans, those are good beans. I think May planted beans are going to take a little bit of the shine off, so to speak.
Yeah, but it's interesting how expectations change, right? Because the expectations in the second or third week of August were as high as they've ever been, higher than they've ever been. Right? Correct. But then those expectations came crashing down in the middle towards the end of September. And then I've got a lot of guys that are going in. And again, the earlier planted stuff is definitely really going to be better than the later planted. But those expectations got too high, then they got too low, and it ended up being somewhere in the middle, right? So, I don't know. You take that and apply that to the USDA's national average yield. I mean, at the end of September, I think there were people talking, 51. Now you've had, private surveys coming out and actually raising yields. So the jury is still very much out on yield, but I think maybe it's not the peak potential, but I still think it's pretty good.
Well, I think changing expectations or raising them happens in the markets as well.
Absolutely.
Look at what we've had here lately. You know, Paul, I had people tell me, hey, I would step in and maybe hedge off some risk at $11 Nova 25 beans. You make the phone call, you say, hey, what do you think about selling some Nova 25 beans at $11? Where are they at? $11. You said you'd be willing to sell them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You know?
Can I play the tape back
I'm going to
for
wait
you?
till tomorrow, right? Because fear of missing out. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what it boils down to, because I'm going to at least throw one adage in there.
Yeah. Thank you.
So let's see, that's Ted 4, Matt 1.
I've
That's
got
how
some
we
making
end up.
up to do.
Lastly, is it still too early, Matt, to have a headline for this 2024 crop year?
I mean, a headline, I think the headline already is that this is a massive corn crop compared to before. I know people are going to say, gee whiz, how do you know? It's not in the bin yet. All I'm saying is that when you see folks say, hey, we've got our first 400 acres harvested and it's averaging 265. The best we've ever seen before is 235 or 240. That's a big crop. I mean, that's a really big crop. And so to me, the headline has been that you've got this massive crop with big demand is all of a sudden chewing in to what we thought was going to be a carryout that we couldn't chew into. You know, I mean, bottom line is this is potentially going to be a story that's not near as burdensome as what it was, and you just raised the biggest crop we've ever seen, as far as yield's concerned.
Do you have a headline?
You're not supposed to say those numbers.
Yeah, I was just saying, you made him shake. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
Excuse me. Retract.
No yield tweets. Hashtag 24. You know, yeah, corn demand. You go back to the USDA's Outlook Forum back in February, and every report since then, we've either seen a lower carryover or unchanged carryover, but it's been an improving outlook for corn. Now, it's not quite reached an area where we can say it's overly bullish, but as I was saying in the regular program, I think we're at a point where corn needs to buy acres. Now, soybeans need to lose acres. So is it soybeans lower and corn stay the same? I don't think so. I think corn needs to get to a price level where we feel comfortable that we're going to cover our costs in order to get the additional acreage. So I can see a corn recovery going into the end of the calendar year, going into spring. But also, I do think there's a lot of bushels that need to get sold before we can get to that point. So in the short term, I worry that there's more downside potential. I'm worried that it could surprise some people after the rally that we just had. In the long term, though, I do think corn is the one that has that potential for upside.
Ted Siefried, so good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for your insight.
Thanks, Paul.
Matt, thanks. Oh, sorry. Yes, Matt. No, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Thanks for taking a break. I hope you're not going to be in too much trouble when you get home for skipping a day of work.
Too much trouble. Well, it'll be there when I get there.
Yeah, it doesn't go away. It's still there. All right, Matt Bennett, thank you so much. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching as well. Next week, we are going to talk about the increasing cost to fight a decades-old disease in the hog industry. We'll also have the commodity market analysis of Naomi Bloom. And also, I want to remind you to subscribe to our Market Insider newsletter on our website. Thank you for joining us. Have a great week.